Before we continue with the show, a quick word from today's episode partner, UBS. Do you want to grow with your business? Then the UBS Growth Talks may be for you. You will get support from peers and experts in order to take that next big step towards success. And the best thing, it's free of charge. For more information, go to ubs.com/growth-talks.
Switzerland is still a bit more conservative when it comes to valuation and when it comes to putting trust into an idea, basically.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Patrick, Martin, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's a pleasure for us as well.
Patrick, you are the head of corporate finance at UBS Switzerland, and you, Martin, are a senior client advisor for large corporates at UBS. And today we're going to talk about the on story, basically from the background story behind the scenes. So first, Patrick, I want to know, when did you actually first meet the on co-founders, Kaspar, David, and Olivier?
I actually know exactly when I met these guys the first time. It was on the 5th or 6th July 2013, and I don't know this date so precisely because these are such impressive guys. It was just because there was Zürichfest on the same date. And I remember that I called them up in the morning and asked them if it's okay if we're going to arrive in the afternoon for the meeting with shorts and T-shirts. And they said, yeah, that's how we work anyway, so just come as you like. And so we traveled to Zoliko and we met these guys in municipal center, I think it's called in English, of the church, and they rented an office there, an office space, and there were just 8 guys at that point. And so we were ringing the bell, and the guys came out and they told us, you can't enter the building so far, so first you have to check out the shoes. And so they gave us 2 pair of shoes. There was a friend of mine as well with me there. And we had to go running for 20 minutes. So I thought, okay, first of all, we were not really eager to meet these guys because we thought, Swiss running shoes, what's up with that? Mm-hmm. And so then we tried them on, and then we know why the story actually developed in that way, because it was a completely different feeling. And we were already impressed before we even started talking.
A really humble beginning, so to speak, at the very first impression.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these guys, you could see they were so committed. They loved their own product. And for us, it was like, you can imagine as a banker, you arrive somewhere outside in a small village in front of a church, municipal center, and they're going to tell you you're going to be the new brand in running shoes tomorrow. And actually already when we were traveling there, we were talking about it and said, okay, it's going to be a quick meeting. It's not going to last for long. So there is no way that we're going to be able to finance these guys. And everything changed after.
Wow, yeah. Martin, I wonder, when you first heard about the On idea, about their running shoes, what were your first thoughts?
My first thoughts were like, how should these guys compete against Adidas and Nike and Asics and so on and so forth? Because these were, at that time, the only, or let's say the big brands you knew when you thought about running shoes, right? And when I first heard about them, I never heard about On or anything. And then basically my first meeting was also, I think that's the way they start the meetings, right? So you have to try the shoes. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't wearing shorts and a T-shirt. I was wearing a suit at that time. But we still had to try the shoes. And I think that's somehow how they convince you by trying the product, right? Because when it's a brand no one knows in a market which is basically all set by the big brands, I think you have to try the product and get convinced by just the feeling of the product, right?
Yeah, that's probably the only way you can also then win clients, because otherwise they would still just go to the big brands.
Yeah, probably, yes, yeah.
So Patrick, when they actually reached out to you, what were they looking for? Where did they ask for your support, for your input?
They ask actually for a financing of their net working capital, so they need some more cash to prepay all their orders, and therefore at the beginning, I mean, it's at that point they didn't generate any cash. It was pretty early in their development phase as a startup. Actually, it's I think they were 3 or 4 years old at that point. I think they started off in 2010, if I remember correctly. And so they were growing very rapidly. And so they needed more net working capital or capital actually to grow. And they went through this Swiss Economic Forum process. They were, I think they were actually winning the award in that year as well as an innovation in production or sporting goods, I think. I don't know if the overall category on the SEF award was named for, but it was kind of a product, innovation product actually that they had won the award. And UBS and the Swiss Economic Forum, we have together kind of a special product which is called today it's called SEF.growth. At that point it was SEF for KMU, where we provide early access to loans if you pass through the process of the Swiss Economic Forum when they assess a startup. So you get a label, which is a certified label from a Swiss quality perspective. So if you get that label, we are able as UBS to look at the company to provide them with loans, so not equity. So with real loans, even though these guys don't generate cash yet. Because ordinarily a startup needs to generate cash, or a company needs to generate cash first, because they have to repay the debt, obviously, because we are not equity. As a bank, you always have to get the money back. And so they were winning this award, and at the same time they got the label, and then we were approached due to this special program to check if we actually can provide them with loan in this SEF for KMU initiative. So that's how we actually got approached, and that's why it was one out of several startups at that point. And sporting shoes or running shoes were not on the top list actually when we were looking through our list of companies which were applying for loans.
And why was actually the loan the right strategy for On back then instead of going for an equity round?
If you're an owner of a company, it's always better to get loans, because you don't want to get washed out or get pass on some more equity of your success story. And it's your baby. You want to hold on as many shares you actually can. And as long as there is someone out there who provides you with loans, you definitely try to go that path. And there is an additional thing, actually. I think there is a benefit if you have a professional loan provider like a bank in your capital structure, because you have to start being more professional in reporting. So it's different than having just equity from friends and family in your startup, because at that point where you really have professional partners in there, you have to get more professional in reporting. That helps you also to control your company in much tighter rules and much more following your internal regulations as well. So I think that's why they tried to get loan. It's cheaper money, obviously. Loan is always cheaper than equity. And they knew that they want to grow fast. And they hope that they read about this opportunity with Swiss Economic Forum to get loans. So they were trying out this path. And at the same time, they were always in discussions about equity, as far as I know. But that was kind of in a parallel process. And, you always try to get the loans in if you can.
And then, Martin, how did that actually look like when you actually worked with On? Because the first loan was probably not enough. You also needed more money with the future growth of the company, I could imagine.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we were trying to support them alongside the growth, right? And they had if we look back, they had a tremendous growth. That was unbelievable. Can't exactly recall, but I think they grew year on year like 60, 70, 80%, which is unbelievable, right? Yeah. And we were trying to make sure that we can basically accompany their growing needs alongside with their growth with the financing. And we had extensive discussions with them. And it was always discussions were always very professional because they knew exactly what they were talking about. They knew exactly what they needed, and they had their business under control, and that was fascinating for a startup or for a company with such high growth here, right? Because usually what we see is when companies are in a startup phase, or even the stage after startup phase, when they enter the growth phase, basically everything is lacking a bit behind, right? So there's this sparkling growth, and finance and controlling and everything is at least 2 or 3 steps behind. Not so with On. They always had the right setup, they had the right system, they were stringent with their controls, and they had an absolutely top-notch reporting towards the banks, and that made it easier for us to provide additional financing, right? Because when you, as a bank, when you feel that the guys have it under control, you're sort of more supportive in providing additional financing, right? Because you know what they say, they're going to deliver what they say. Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, they always over-delivered. So that builds trust, right?
Exactly. In the end, it's all about trust. I just wanted to say, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why were they able to not only deliver that much and over-deliver, but also have these strong reporting capabilities? Did they just have the right skill set on their own? Did they hire the right people? What was the key part there to actually be able to execute on that?
I think it was a combination. First of all, they had the right people in the right positions. And it was clear to them that even though they came from different organizations, from large organizations, it was clear to them that when working for On, they had to deliver in a startup mode. So do it, right? Yeah. That was the first thing. And I think also what they did very well is they had systems and automation from the beginning. So they didn't, if I remember correctly, they didn't start up with Excel and stuff. They had an ERP in place, which basically allowed them. I still remember one of my first meetings with the CFO. He told me that, well, I can basically log into my ERP and I know our global sales 30 minutes later. So the actual sales with a 30-minute delay on a global scale for a small company at that time. And I was like, whoa, that can't be, right?
That's crazy.
That's absolutely crazy. But they did it. So it's a combination between people and system and mindset, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, really impressive. Mm-hmm. Patrick, at the same time, you not only gave a loan or even supported their equity round, you actually also do a lot of discussions to plan and observe, analyze different scenarios with the companies that you work with. So at those stages, these discussions, what were the scenarios that you looked at and how do you actually help them in the decision-making process?
Overall, which is probably interesting from some other, let's say, consumer product startups as well, one of the biggest challenge for a consumer product company is actually to get the financing of their future sales. So this is what I mentioned before with net working capital. It's basically the money you need to finance tomorrow, right? So and that's what a bank actually doesn't like to do, because this is high risk. I mean, sure. When you think about if you produce T-shirts, right, and today the color pink is hype and everybody buys the pink T-shirt, you have to order them now to sell next summer. But next summer maybe pink is not hype anymore. So you're gonna get stuck on your T-shirt. You have to do discounts and you not get the money or the margins which you need to generate money and repay a credit. Mm-hmm. And the same situation was actually on, and that was the biggest challenge we had at the beginning, because as a bank, financing basically their future sales is definitely not what we want to do. And we have a lot of these requests actually on a daily basis, because whenever someone wants to open up a shop, he has to invest first to get basically their backlog in and to get the products in and something on the shelf, but you have to get the money for this. And nobody actually is willing to invest in this as a bank, because we're not sure if we actually we get the money back. So what we did on, and this was actually the longest discussion. It didn't take actually just a couple of weeks. So I think we said we were done with the first credit line after 6 months, 5 to 6 months. So we worked quite heavily with these guys. And what we did was actually not relying on their expectation. We were only relying on effective orders. So they had such a fast growth in orders, in fixed signed orders across the world, that we were looking at the order income, and we were basing our loans or our credit level on their order level. Because so that we actually knew that whatever they actually have as a fixed order in there, they will be able to ship, because they were not an own retailer. They were only distributor actually at this point. They didn't have a flagship store yet, like now. So what they had to do is just kind of get the money from their clients in at the end, and that's what you get when they sign an order fixed. And on these orders, there was kind of some, I can't remember precisely, but there were some rules in there that at least I think 60% of the orders have to be paid anyway. So we were relying on this 60%. And then at the end, that's what happened over time. And I think, Martin, you can confirm this. We were growing with their order book. And we were not basically relying on their whatever business plan they're going to tell me we're going to sell 2 million shoes in 2000, whatever, at that point, 15, 16. Right. Because we were not able to do that, because this is hot air. It's like I have 1% market share of whatever Switzerland. This is nothing we actually can bet on as a bank. But we had to rely on really safe, kind of more or less safe assumption related to orders. And that's how we actually were growing basically with our credit line with the business of On. And you were talking about scenarios. That's what we were talking with these guys. So they came up with a first financial plan. We looked at the financial plan and we said, we actually would rely or change the financial plan of On more on fixed revenues or fixed orders, Then a part of it's going to be kind of expectations, assumptions, and then we have to have clear definition of what assumption is laying behind those additional growth. And depending on the certainty of the achievement of these assumptions, we were able to grow with our credit line. And this is actually a model I talked to Martin of On several times after our financing. They used for a long time. I'm not sure how long. Maybe you know better, Martin, than I do. But they used this model actually for quite a long time, not to over-invest or to grow fast or to spend more money or capital than they actually really need, because you can do both. You can invest too much at the beginning and you're not going to sell it, or you can be too low and then you're not going to be able to provide your products at the end. So it's kind of a balancing act for every product producer or retailer in the world. And I think that really helped them to grow, with a necessary capital investment, I would say.
And I think what they also did very well is they very well balanced between equity and debt. So they frequently did some equity rounds, which is a bit counterintuitive in the sense of that you're being diluted as a founder, right? You have to give away basically shares of your baby, of your company. But at the same time, with that, they made sure that the investments are equally paid, or not equally, but they were paid by equity and debt. So in that way, their balance sheet never got imbalanced basically between equity and debt. And they played this game very, very well. That's what I was saying before, right? They had a very professional attitude and they knew what they were doing.
And I think interestingly, they were able to approach very, very professional investors.
Absolutely.
All the time. And investors which had the same kind of DNA as the three founders. Also the team itself. I think they had a very good hand. I mean, I think there is always some luck with it as well, that you get the right guys in. But I think they just had the right approach to get the people in they needed on the equity side as a sponsor or partner, as well as in the business. Because I didn't met any guy who was not affected by this On virus at all. because they all were kind of happy to be there, and that helps. It was not just, I don't know if you talk to the three guys now, it was not just a smooth path to success.
Of course not.
They got hit several times. They were not successful in some of the markets. They had some product issues. But if you have, an equity or an owner group together, which knows that we're going to make it, and they stick together, that gives you actually the confidence to make smart decisions and not just bold decisions at the end, I think.
The interesting thing you're saying is this on virus, basically. Whenever you walk into their office, back then, but also nowadays, when you walk into their office, it's sort of entering a different world. As you were saying, I mean, it's not the case that everything went smooth from the beginning. But even if there were obstacles and even if there were setbacks, basically, whenever you came into the office, you could feel this positive attitude, and not just from the founders or the management team. It was all over, right? So this virus spread very well, actually.
I mean, they're also really big marketing talents. I mean, their storytelling, of course, the product is amazing, but also the marketing storytelling, that's outstanding.
I think that's the pairing of these two skills. I mean, when you know where they're coming from, I think this is a very important part of their success as well. I think they're branding experts, obviously, and they're marketing experts. And they had, I think, a product. And at the beginning, I mean, the product had some flaws as well, like every product does. But they were able to, not to be too overly, confident about how good they are. So they were willing to learn on the way, and they always used it also in a positive way in their brand. And I think it was the pairing of these two skills was probably one of the most important success factors of the guys.
Another third point that I also quickly want to address with you, because that was an important decision factor in the beginning when granting that first loan, was their asset-light strategy. What role did that play for you as a bank?
Yeah, obviously, for us, it's always good if they're not putting all the money we give them. We're going to give them right in bricks and stones or machineries, because usually in today's world in particular, this is a higher risk strategy. And I think as I mentioned before at the beginning, I think these were more like marketing guys than actually manufacturing or industrial guys from a background, and that's how they played it, I think. I mean, I was not involved in all these discussions, obviously, but when you look how they did it, it was very, very asset light. I mean, I met them, there were 8 guys, and out of 8 guys, they were already, I think, on a level of 150,000 shoes, produced somewhere in Vietnam, delivered to, I don't know anymore, but 10, 12 different countries, and nowhere they had their own people on the ground. And it still worked. Yeah. And so they used actually this kind of no asset or asset light model in a perfectly way, I think. And this is I think, actually a very good model for Swiss companies, because in Switzerland, assets are expensive anyway. Labor is expensive. And as long as you can actually grow without having your own assets, it's much more flexible. You're able to adjust to any moves wherever, if it's on a geographical perspective, or on a labor perspective, or on a manufacturing perspective, and it also gives you the flexibility to get a partner in which is top notch. I think today to be on a technology frontier, on top of it as a company, it has to be your core skill. But if you need manufacturing skills which are top notch or world famous, you're not going to be able to do this by yourself. You rather ask the guy who is capable of doing this. And I think the specialization grew over the last 20 years rapidly, and I think they played it like an early ecosystem, which is in everybody's mouth today, right? Everybody's talking about ecosystem. They did that at day one. And that's, I think, a very smart business model, which helped us as well, actually, from a lending perspective. You're really checking out the risks, and the risks are lower if they can actually move from one to the other guys, from one supplier or distributor to another one, if you need to adjust on margins or costs or whatever, and then you can play the market. And I think this helps as a bank actually to finance.
So it's not only about trust, it's also about de-risking to then have a good feeling, yeah, we can actually do that, we can give you a loan.
Right. Even though, I mean, to be honest, de-risking, we were just growing with them, right? from a banking perspective,
right.
we just were lending more and more, and it took a long time till they actually were really generating cash because they're investing everything in growth, and this is what happens to a lot of startups at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you need the breadth to stay with them.
Exactly.
And I think we did that quite well.
Absolutely. But I think what they also did quite well is you were mentioning about manufacturing capabilities. So they had this asset light model, right? That's not only true for the manufacturing part, it's also true for the logistics and warehousing part. So also there, they didn't do it themselves. Why should they? I mean, it's a global scale, right? 8 people out of Zollikoon might be a tough game.
Sure.
So they basically contracted someone who's world champion in doing that.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
And you also mentioned that you actually grew with the company, right? So you started with a single-digit million loan, basically, and then you increased there steadily, even to 3 digits, if I'm not mistaken. And I wonder, across all that process, the growth, did you ever have any sleepless nights where you thought, oh, what are we doing here? This is not going to end well.
No, to be honest, I think we never had sleepless nights. No. Well, we had sleepless nights, but not because of On. But no, honestly, no. Because, as I said before, we built up trust with them, or they built up trust with us. So we always knew when they're going to say something that they're going to achieve it. They proved in the past, they proved in the present, and we were convinced that they will prove it in the future. And based on that professional behavior, we were very confident that this one is going to work out. So it comes back to what we said before, right? The right people, the right systems, and the right attitude. And they just did it.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, we had excessive discussions, as Patrick mentioned before. Sometimes a new loan contract took us a couple of months to basically to sign it, right? We had excessive discussions with them. We had hard discussions with them. But the good thing is, it was sort of a sparring partner situation, right? So we learned from them, and I think they learned also from us, and they always listened to the advice. They not always they took it or they did it exactly as we advised them, but they always took the advice and made something out of it. And that was really key.
I think this is actually a very important point when I compare On to some of the other fast-growing companies or startups in Switzerland we are working with. They were always open for external views, and it doesn't matter on which topic, I think. They were never kind of proud or too proud actually to listen to other experts, and also in the beginning. And I think when you listen to these guys even today, they are still impressed of others. I mean, when you saw them on the IPO as well, I mean they don't look like the proud guys which are world famous now. I think they are still eager to learn, and that's what helps actually if you're as a financing partner as well. We had a lot of exchanges, and we also got this feeling that when we asked them for something, or we were not sure about something of their development or for what they actually need more loans, they were very open. They were listening to us, and if we told them maybe it's too much for now, why we're not waiting for whatever, they were always kind of listening to us and thinking it through one more time. And sometimes they push back and they say, no, now we need it, or whatever. Sure. But I think it's a part, what you said, like a sparring partner. We see a lot of companies approaching us, they already know everything and they don't listen to anyone. And I don't think this is a good way of developing a company, because there is always someone out there who knows more than you do, and you rather listen to them, and then you can still make your own decision at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they did well. Mm-hmm.
I think you touched upon a couple of very important sort of characteristics of a successful founder or a successful business person overall now in that interview. You also mentioned the IPO. So in 2021, On then got publicly listed, but not in Switzerland. They went to the US. Why do you think was that the right decision, Martin?
Well, I think that, first of all, US is the biggest market to them. It's the biggest running shoe market worldwide, right? And I think that itself certainly basically also led to the decision to IPO in the US. And I think also if you look at the IPO market, Switzerland, I mean, I like the Swiss IPO market, but I think if you look at valuations, for example, I think Switzerland is still a bit more conservative when it comes to valuation and when it comes to putting trust into an idea, basically. Mm-hmm. And the US, with the Silicon Valley and everything, I think in the US, the investors are more like, yeah, give it a try, go. And here in Switzerland, we're more like, well, give it a little try and see what happens, and then give it another little try and see what happens. In the US, it's just big, boom. Yeah. And I think that also helped, or basically supported their decision to do a US IPO.
I think there were another two additional factors to this. Their ownership structure changed as well over time, so they had much more American shareholders as well on board. So as soon as you actually have an international shareholder mix, you have to take care of all of them, not just the Swiss side. And the other thing, it's a consumer product. And there is only one market that is actually the best market for consumer product, and that's the US market. And I think this was another main driver, from a valuation standpoint as well. A consumer product which is listed in New York, it's a different story. And if you get the chance, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, if I get the chance to get listed at the New York Stock Exchange, okay, don't ask me twice.
Sure.
And at the end, if you really have the power, and at that point, On still is a global brand, and the global brand has the choice. If you're not as big, or if you're more focused on European markets, I think the Swiss IPO would have done it as well. And I don't think if you would have talked to them 5 years ago that they're gonna get listed on the New York Stock Exchange, they're probably not gonna tell you, yes, sure, that's the plan. That was not the plan at all. And actually, I don't think even they had a plan. It was their dream. But the first dream was probably an IPO in Switzerland, not one out of New York. Mm-hmm. But I think, for a consumer good, and when you see that even Dwayne Johnson was wearing the shoes on the Super Bowl, I think they made it. So I would have taken a chance as well, even though, we would have loved having them in Switzerland. But obviously, for them, it's the best way to do it.
In that regard, UBS never invested its own money into On from an equity standpoint. You personally, I don't know, but is that something that you regret?
We neither. I would love to have to. Never get the chance. Yeah. No, actually, UBS doesn't invest in any startup directly, except startups or companies which get somehow related to UBS or kind of working with UBS. But other than that, we're not investing. We don't have a fund or anything yet. We're working on this. But that's why we are sticking to the bank loan as our function as a bank actually is. What we are doing is we helping our clients to invest in startups, like our wealth management clients. So they get the chance to actually invest directly in some of the startups, and that's what we did with On as well, actually. So we helped them to find some investors at the early stage, and that's what we do with startups. But UBS doesn't invest directly in startups as a program like some of our peers do.
Yeah, then these cases make you think, should we not change that strategy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was following the IPO and I thought, okay, Would have been a nice story.
Absolutely. Do you think in that regard that we will see more Swiss companies doing an IPO and going public soon?
I think there is definitely a trend for smaller IPOs, and that helps the Swiss startup scene, I think, or even the Swiss companies. It doesn't have to be just a startup, obviously, but in Switzerland right now, the SIX currently is working on a solution where they are able to create a platform for smaller startups. It's called Sparks. It's actually quite interesting. I think this helps you to have, with a lower capital structure volume, to already have a public offering. I think they're still working on it. I don't know if they already have one. I think they don't, but I think next year they plan to get this Sparks model going. And the other one is this new SPACs scene, which probably a lot of the startup community knows already about. I think this is a very fast growing and interesting market. In the US, it's already working very, very well. So you see a lot of fast growing companies getting basically an IPO through a SPAC. In Switzerland, there's a lot of discussions going on right now. I think there are a couple of SPACs out there. A closing, as of now, at least I know, wasn't done yet, but pretty close to it. I think it actually could happen already in 2021. But I think this is interesting, and this helps actually. You need a certain size. Obviously, this is not your first couple of year thing, right? You need a certain size, but it gives definitely an easier access to public capital for fast-growing companies than in the past. And in particular for Switzerland, I think this is a good sign because in the past, we were always behind the Anglo-Saxon areas because the capital markets in the US and Great Britain were completely different. There is much easier access to capital, to smaller tranches, but you also have a different market. You have out of the box a 300 million client market for a consumer Prague instead of a couple of millions in Switzerland. So your growth potential is different. That's why their markets developed faster. And I think with the digital channels today, your borders are not as important anymore. So even Swiss companies getting easier access to international markets, and that helps actually to have double-digit growth numbers and gives you access to other capital. I think this is interesting.
Really, really motivating. So the sky is the limit, so to speak.
For some, when you look at some of the startups, I think they're doing a great job, and I think we're a fascinating startup market in Switzerland.
I think what people have to think through quite thoroughly when talking about an IPO is also that at the moment you do this IPO, you're public.
Of course.
So beforehand, you sort of you do your own thing, right? And you might have a brand out there and you do marketing for your brand. But as soon as you're public, your figures, your financials are also public. Yeah. So by then you become very, very visible. And people just need to be aware of that fact.
Yeah, it's easy to underestimate that, to say, I want to go public for the sake of going public, right, but I don't want to have all the downsides that can also come with it. Yeah. You also have to be fully aware of those who make a conscious decision.
You have reporting duties after the IPO, right? And you better fulfill them.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, and your entrepreneurial decision making is going to be different after, because you have to basically explain every little decision publicly, which is could take a lot of time, limits your flexibility, limits your kind of reaction time as well to whatever going on in the market. And so you need a certain level of growth or a volume in your business area or market share, because otherwise I don't think it's actually the right thing to do.
And you might certainly you might find your financials being discussed in the media, which wasn't the case before, and you have to justify your decisions in the media, and that's a different story than only, in brackets of course, justifying your decisions with your closed investor group beforehand. So.
And there are actually companies out there, they are doing the other way around, right? So we see some delistings as well, because if you see that the benefits are not good enough, at the end you decide after a certain time to delist or a part of the business again to get to keep up with the speed of the market, because that's the challenge of the large companies today, right? The smaller ones, the fast-growing companies, they're much more flexible and dynamic, and this could also be a disadvantage if you're getting large and public, I guess.
Before we dive into the last part, I have one final question for you. Now imagine there's a Swiss company that wants to go big, wants to go international and really make it, inspired by the On story that you just shared. Where should they get help? What would you recommend to them in order to increase the chances of getting there? Maybe you can go first, Martin.
I would recommend them to talk to the industry leaders. In the industry, they want to grow, basically. So talk to people who did it before. Talk to people which were successful, which were unsuccessful. Talk about the ups and downs, and always be open to receive advice and ask for advice and ask for help. I think that's the most important thing.
Wonderful. Patrick?
Yeah, I fully agree with Martin's points. I think in addition, don't be too eager. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time than you think. A little bit of patience helps, and listen, as you mentioned, listen to a lot of different experts, and start to talk early. Because if you wait too long and you think you have to do it within the next 12 months, it's not going to work. So talk early about options, and always leave open as many options as possible. Because you don't know what's coming. I mean, who knew about our pandemic situation? And there are a couple of guys out there which were very, very close to the next step, and they got hit badly. And as more option you keep up, and you can still make flexible decisions at the end, it will help you. So this will be my advice, because you never know what's coming.
Very good advice. Thank you for sharing that. Now, for the very final part, we have some rapid fire questions for you. I give you a quick selection or a short question, and you have to answer in one sentence. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's see. Sure. The first one is for you, Martin. Product or marketing?
Product.
Why?
I think you can have world-class marketing if the essence isn't right, it will fail sooner or later.
Fair point. For you, Patrick, growth or profitability?
Profitability. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't grow.
Yeah. Martin, debt or equity financing?
Both.
A good mix of both.
Yeah. That's the only answer I can give. A good mix of both.
That's a fair point. Patrick, IPO in Switzerland or in the US?
If I'm able to make it in the US and I have a product which is like a consumer product, I would definitely do it in the US.
Great. And the question for both of you, maybe to start with you, Martin, what's your favorite on shoe?
My all-time favorite is my first on shoe. That's the Cloud.
Nice.
Mine as well, actually.
Oh.
Black.
No, I had it blue-white. Mine was blue-white. But maybe to stretch that question a bit, I'm very eager to see the new Cyclone, this sustainable shoe they're developing now, or they have developed, which they say you can't own it, you just have to subscribe to it. I think it's out next summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool.
And I'm very much looking forward to that one. Yeah. Just because of the idea, producing a shoe out of, I think it's beans, some sort of beans.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And also from a business model perspective, I mean, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. That was a lot of fun. All the best, and hopefully many more on cases that you can work with out here from Switzerland. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.